Is up, everybody? It is time. It's Super Week. It's been a super season. This is Jeff Needs Sports, part of the Off the Ball Network. I got my main man Stu with the Morning Brew with Stu from the network with me today. And if you listen to Stu's show, which you should, the Morning Brew with Stu, we've done some drafts. We did a Christmas movie draft. Last week we did what did we do last week, Stu?
Well, this actually tonight
Oh,
coming
that's right.
out,
I'm
or
sorry.
I
Stepped
guess
all
last
over it.
night. I guess last night coming out is the our top 10. What was it? One hit
One hit
wonders in the
wonders.
Super
Super
Bowl.
Bowl. Yeah.
So that will be fun to kind of go over. We did a draft there. We did 5 apiece, and that was a fun one to go back through and kind of talk about.
Yeah. So first and foremost, go check out Stu's show. We on Super Week. He's got a lot of content coming out. We got that show coming out. When you hear this, that show is ready. You can go to that, and you can go and listen to Stu and our good friend Jay Stevens from the Jay Stevens Show and the Locked On Buckeyes podcast that you guys know me from. Guest appearances, and they recap one of the more important Super Bowls in their lifetimes as Indianapolis Colts fans. And I'll leave it at that. It's a really cool show. Highly recommend that. So again, check out everybody at Off the Ball Network. Check out Stu. Check out everything. So what we're doing tonight for Super Week is something a little different. I like to do some fun stuff. We're not going to beat you over the head with how to stop Mahomes, 7th round, Purdy, all that stuff. What we're talking about tonight is me and Stu's going to do another draft, and we're doing the most likable Super Bowl teams of all time. And basically what the criteria is classic. If you ain't got a dog in the fight and you watch the game, you would root for this team. You enjoyed this team winning, losing, whatever. Maybe it's how they played throughout the season, or maybe it's just their playoff run. There is no, but basically it's like if you're not emotionally connected to a team that like you enjoyed watching, maybe pulled for, maybe rooted for, maybe dropped a couple bucks on them, whatever. And so we're going to do just like Stu does on his show. We'll go back and forth with a draft here, and we're going to pick 10 teams, and you guys know us. We're going to talk about some alsos, and as we go, like as we bring up these teams, we're going to bring up memories. We're going to talk about it. It's going to be a fun show. So just lock in, everybody. It's a good time. We're trying to celebrate the final week of football season before we see the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers take it on Sunday. So Stu, my man, when I brought this to you, like, how did you in your mind develop your criteria for picking the teams that you're going to pick tonight?
Just who was the most likable? I think I try to think back to those times. Some of them I wasn't alive for, or I was barely young for, but kind of
That's all right.
I've watched America's games. I've watched the NFL networks, their NFL top 10 shows. So you can kind of gather what the vibe around these teams were. Some of them I remember. Some of these teams, like, hopefully you won't steal them because you said you don't have any Super Bowl losers on your list. Like my number one, like my first pick will be whenever that time comes. I rooted for this team and I wasn't even a fan of this team. So that tells you, I just remember what that was like when they were playing and those types of things.
Cool. That's how I kind of did. I kind of just went by like what I remembered. I haven't watched my Dolphins play in a Super Bowl since 1984. I was 9 years old, so I barely remembered, even though I do have a vague memory of kicking and screaming and crying on my dad. My dad's a Dolphins fan. We watched a game together. He handled it better than I did. I didn't understand what was going on and why we were losing. I was a much more poor sport back then. I couldn't, as a child, handle the pain and the anguish that I went through that night. It's never really left me as a sports fan, but it's got better since.
I have one of those.
Since my team hasn't been back, every year I gotta like basically pick a side. Very seldom, like I love the Super Bowl. You know me, guys like me and you, we love football. So I watch the game. I talk myself into a side, whether it's about one player, whether it's about one team.
Yeah.
Whatever the reason, doesn't matter.
I do that a lot I find myself rooting for my friends' teams. So like,
another good
like
one
for you, like if the Colts didn't make the playoffs, I was wanting the Dolphins to win. I root for my best friends are Packers fans. So, I root for the Packers.
Awesome.
Because first of all, they were also my first favorite team, but that's a different story for a different time. But I root for my friends' teams to win. I have a couple of friends that were Browns fans. So, I was really hoping, those types of things, just all those things for me as well, because my team hasn't made it since 2009 was the last Super Bowl they were in. They didn't win it, and we haven't been to the playoffs in God knows how long. So, I
It
kind of
has been a
find,
weird drought. I mean, we won't get into that, but you're right.
yeah,
That's what I'm saying. Just put it in perspective. I tell you about watching the last time I watched my team in the Super Bowl. Also, the Miami Dolphins have the longest playoff win drought of any team in the NFL. The Miami Dolphins. We're
crazy.
talking the undefeated Dolphins, the two-time Super Bowl champion, been to 5 Super Bowls. And now they are basically the longest drought. So that's how fast it happens. It ain't gonna happen to the Colts. You guys are gonna be okay. But I'm just saying, like, sports moves fast. So yeah, that was just my criteria. Is like, I watched this game, I enjoyed it, I wrapped my arms around the characters, the players, whatever. So we're gonna get started here. I'm gonna let Stu go first because he typically always wants me to go first on his show, and I'll steal picks from him. It's terrible. So Stu, I'm gonna let you go first. Your first pick in the most likable team, Super Bowl teams of all time draft is
It's the 2008 Arizona Cardinals. And I say that because
okay.
I go back.
That's a great pick, man.
I found myself rooting for the Arizona Cardinals back then. I mean, you talk about, first of all, the story, right, of the fact that the Arizona Cardinals have never won a Super Bowl, yet alone been to a Super Bowl. But then you kind of think about the outside things. There's not many true role models that I would put my arm around and say, son, you should be a role model of this guy anymore in the NFL. There's a lot of you guys with a lot of baggage, shall I say, in the NFL. And so Larry Fitzgerald's one of the last few guys that you could put your arm around and say he's a true role model. And then there's the story. We know the original story of Kurt Warner, right? The bag boy who goes on to win league MVP, who goes on to be part of the greatest show of turf. But this was the second part of his story where he leaves the Rams, goes to the New York Giants, gets replaced by Eli Manning, gets kicked out of town, goes to Arizona as a backup to Matt Leinart, and they say Matt Leinart ain't getting the job done. He comes in and he carries the most unwanted franchise and the most unwanted quarterback. This unwanted quarterback takes this unwanted franchise to the Super Bowl and really kind of sets forth another, I think, 10 years when you think about what goes on. Yes, they have a couple years there with John Beck and Matt Leinart, but then they get Carson Palmer and Bruce Arians, and they go on this incredible run as well. They don't win a Super Bowl or any of that, but they do win a lot of games. This was the most likable team I can remember in a long time, and when you proposed this to me, that was the first team that popped in my head.
I love it, man. I love the pick. I love that team. I rooted for that team. As much as I like San Antonio Holmes, the San Antonio Holmes drive, as I call it, to win that game, Arizona coached that team. They just waited too long to pounce. I think they should have went wide open from the get-go and let Fitzgerald cook. And I do believe they win that. And without the James Harrison, amazing touchdown, if anything, the other side of the field, I don't know if we'll do this show this week. One of the most unlikable teams of all time was that Steelers team. Like, Arizona was the better team, and Fitzgerald should have been that should have been it. That should have been the moment of his career. And it still was. I'm glad you threw that in there because I love that team. I love Fitz. He's an icon. That was the first. My son was probably, man, he couldn't have been 3 or 4 years old, whatever it was, when Fitz was at Pitt. Right. And I don't know, you're young. You probably don't remember Fitz at Pitt.
No.
You was just a baby.
No.
It was a big deal. Best player in the country. I had to get a plain gray t-shirt and make a Larry Fitzgerald jersey for my son. That's what a big impact he had in college. We're talking about in college, this dude. That's what an impact he had. Great pick. One of my favorite football players of all time. I'm glad you said that, man. That was a good pick. So I went the complete other direction. So for my first pick, the overall number 2, I thought about it, but I couldn't get past it. This is one of the most amazing teams we've ever seen, one of the most entertaining teams we've ever seen, the most personalities that we ever let loose in the NFL. We are talking about the 1985 Chicago Bears. Yes, the Super Bowl shuffling crew. I remember that season. I've told the story all week. Like, I was just old enough to remember the entire season. Mainly, I can like this team because the Miami Dolphins were the only team to beat them that year. and a famous game that team should have been undefeated. But what was cool about it, it was like you had the music video, you had William Refrigerator Perry was a kid, but he was fun, and this is a time when you didn't have all the backlash, like you didn't have all the hate, like they just let people have fun. Like I'm not saying people didn't root against the Bears, but they didn't go to Twitter like Jim McMahon wasn't a good quarterback, but yet he was allowed to be a superstar quarterback that season. You had Willie Galt, you had Mike Singletary in the look, you had Buddy Ryan, you had Ditka, you had characters across the board, and then you had the New England Patriots come in, who, as a Dolphins fan, I just naturally dislike the Patriots. So when Chicago came in, Walter Payton, RIP, man, one of the greatest human beings and players that we ever saw in the NFL. This team was loaded with characters, and that stood the test of time. It was fun to watch. It was fun to watch them beat the Patriots down. The entire season was a TV reality show. Like teams just don't do that. It was the closest thing is maybe like the Miami Heat, the first year of the Miami Heat with LeBron there, as far as like they put themselves on a stage and
or one that we mentioned too. Another beatdown we mentioned too was if you listen to the podcast I did with Jay, how about the Seahawks Broncos beatdown? That's very reminiscent. You talk about
we may talk about that.
With a very good defense.
We may talk about that. So anyway, 85 Bears, I couldn't pass them up. And I was not a Bears fan. Wasn't before, wasn't after, but for one night, one season, really, just one of the funnest teams. It allowed sports to be fun and one of the best teams I ever saw. Like that game wasn't even as close as the score sounds. Like it was crazy. So number 2 pick, 85 Bears.
Heck yeah, good pick. Good pick.
All right, who do you got next?
All right, do you want me to go relatively newer, or do you want me to go? I only got one team that's outside of the 2000s, which I guess technically.
Okay, go ahead and do your outside of the 2000s. Just that way we don't double up, because I got a lot of older teams.
All right. Well, I don't mean to use this same quarterback back to back, but I'm going to go with the 1999 St. Louis Rams. And
you got it. You
stole the greatest show on turf. I mean, this is when the story kicked off for Kurt Warner. The bag boy took over for Trent Green.
Yep.
He did all the arena, the Iowa Barnstormer quarterback, carries his team to the Super Bowl. Eventually, they make a movie of it. Eventually, he goes on to play Tom Brady in the Super Bowl a few years later and lose. But really kind of shaped how we viewed some of these legends, Marshall Faulk, Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, because maybe with Trent Green, this doesn't happen. I'm not saying Trent Green isn't a great quarterback. He was good in his own right, all those types of things, but it took a special type of year and a special type of just vibe and environment, and that's what Kurt Warner brought, and he carried that team to the Super Bowl. They went on to beat the Tennessee Titans. Thank God for a tackle made by a Rams linebacker. I have to listen to Tennessee fans talk about their Super Bowl like they're the Dallas Cowboy fans. And even though they haven't won one since the 90s, you like to run it in our face. But I can't stand the Titans, so thank God the St. Louis Rams got that win on that Super Bowl on that day.
So that team was on my list. Like they definitely would have made one of my 5 picks. I loved it. I love the story. I love Marshall Faulk. He's one of my favorite players, human beings, just all around, just dudes of all time. And plus that was a team that really opened up offense and kind of pushed forward in the NFL. Like we need to open this stuff up. Now I will admittedly, I was rooting for the Titans that night. I love Steve McNair. I love my man, Eddie George. Eddie George was almost the MVP of a Super Bowl. And I see where you're coming from. Totally. I get you. And so, but I still had the Rams on my list, even though like I had nothing against them that night. Nothing against them winning, that night I was.
You had play. I mean, you're an Ohio State fan. You had Eddie George.
Yeah, Eddie's a big deal. But I love that Rams team. And then when they played the Patriots, I flipped it, and I was, you know what I mean. I was going the other way. But great pick, great team. But greatest show on turf. Like that nickname is held for 25 years. Like I love the pick, man. That's solid. All right, so I'm next. Now this is where it starts getting murky. Like I don't want to lose.
I stole one from you. Are you going to steal one from me?
I don't think so, man. Because I think of allegiances, we're going to be on different pages. So I don't think we're going to have to worry about that. But I went ahead and put it. 2013 Seahawks. You brought it up already.
Oof.
I absolutely Love that's the if anybody doesn't remember, that's young Russell Wilson, the Legion of Boom, brought the hammer down on what we thought was a sure Super Bowl victory for Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos. And from Jump Street, from Jump Street, that game was a wrap. Still, still the for like if you give me like just a playoff run, I still think it's the most complete, best modern defense that we've ever seen, because of everything they could do with Cam, and then you had Richard Sherman run like you had the whole this playoff run. Richard Sherman going back and forth with Michael Crabtree and the 49ers. Yeah, Marshawn Lynch was a tornado, and just it was a likable team. I've never really cared for the Broncos. I never had much against Manning, but I didn't root for him either. I really didn't care. So it was something about the way Seattle played that night that I just enjoyed, like that level of football, like that level of defense. I would have guessed that they would have had 2 or 3 more, but I mean, things go fast in football. Guys get hurt, guys get old. They were a yard away a couple years later. We might be telling a different story. Pete Carroll, big story. He's coming from USC, the big personality. Again, another team that allowed the spotlight to be on them and do it a little different. But for that, Malcolm Smith, you know what I mean? All them dudes, man, like just I just enjoyed watching the Super Bowl. I know it seems like a blowout, but sometimes I just enjoy football perfection. And that night, man, Seattle was on it. So I'll take these 13 Seahawks as my second pick.
That was a really good pick. Listen, I'm going to tell you a story here.
I like it.
I was a Seahawks fan in that game for 2 reasons. One,
I know one.
Marshawn Lynch is one of my top 3 favorite players of all time. Top 3 favorite players of all time is Marshawn Lynch. I would have loved for him to have a horseshoe in his helmet. Never was an opportunity, never would have happened, but I would have loved it. So another reason I rooted for the Seahawks in that game was if you go back and you listen to I don't know if we talked about this or not. Maybe me and Jay talked about it after the podcast, but 2012, the Colts say sayonara to Peyton Manning. Thank you for everything you've done, but you had 2 neck surgeries. We don't know if you're ever going to be the guy that you were ever again. They draft Andrew Luck, and I don't know about you, Jeff, and I give Walker a hard time about this, but I know Walker's actually an Ole Miss fan, but there's a lot of bandwagon fans these days. And I don't know about you, but I was raised that if you're going to be a fan, you're a fan for life. Win, lose, draw, 2 wins, 12 wins, undefeated, doesn't matter. You suffer through it. You're a fan. That's
basically,
how yeah. That's how I was raised. You basically be a Cleveland Brown fan. If you're a Browns fan, you're a Browns fan for life. No matter how bad it gets, you hang in there. That's what I was raised for. So when all these people left who called themselves diehard Colts fans all of a sudden became diehard Peyton Manning fan or diehard Bronco fans, and I've been a Broncos fan my whole life secretly. No, you haven't. And then Peyton retires, and they come back and say, "Oh, I've always been a Colts." No, you haven't. Because I remember when you were wearing orange on the hallways in high school. I remember when you were wearing orange to your kid's high school football game with an 18 on it. No, you haven't been. So those things really kind of irked me, and that's where my Andrew Luck love came, because it felt like when everybody else was when people within the Colts fan base was piling on to him, I felt like at times, and I know it wasn't this case, but I felt like at times I was the only person standing there on the table fighting for Andrew Luck. So that's why ultimately I was rooting for the Seahawks in this game. Now, I did cry a little bit later on when Peyton won the Super Bowl for the Broncos in 2015, but that's why, because 1, I was a big Marshawn Lynch fan. I loved the trash talk of Richard Sherman.
Yeah.
And 3, I was rooting against Peyton, just to be flat out honest with you. Blasphemy and Colts eyes fans, but I don't care. That's what I was doing. I'm shocked this made the list, though, because I would have thought they were one of the most disliked.
Yeah, but you know how I watch.
I mean, yes, me too. We're the same way.
Everything you just said, just kind of like I wasn't attached to Peyton, but all the same stuff. Like I like somebody who upsets the like. I already think about it. I got the 85 Bears and I got these Seahawks teams. They both upset the apple cart, and I
almost put them on this list because I liked them, but I knew that Richard Sherman press the interview with
Oh,
Aaron Andrews rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. For
and it
me,
was
I loved
great.
it. I thought it was great, but that's why they didn't make my list. So I'm glad you chose them.
That interview, that game, like everything about that playoff run is like that was my household. Like me and my
Yeah,
son were like, this is my like we still love that team. Like we still talk about that Legion of Boom team. Like that will go down in our like personal like most loved teams of all time just because of everything you said. And again, that's why this is our list. Like this, they're probably on some of the most disliked lists, but I was never like, oh gosh, you know what I mean? Like I wasn't there. I'm with you. So anyways, oh yeah, you're up. All right. So with your third pick, the fifth overall, you have
I'm gonna go with the 2007 New York Giants.
oh nice pick.
You talk about a 9-7
Oh, the
team,
world savers. They saved the
and
world,
Tom
Stu.
Brady and the New England Patriots come in. They're undefeated, right? They're heading in. Could this be the first team to ever go 20-0? Was the thing, and the answer ultimately was no. You have to be some likable guy. I know nowadays they put unlikable guys on TV, but you have to be likable when they put Michael Strahan on morning TV.
Yeah.
You have to be likable when they put Eli Manning on ESPN. Like you got to be pretty likable when you got some TV personalities
Yep.
out there as well. And then you talk about the David Tyree catch. You talk about some of the things that come down with it. Yeah, for me, this team was hard to not root for, especially when Darth Vader's playing on the other side over
Yeah.
there. It's hard to not root against Luke Skywalker and the baby boys
Eh,
here with the New York Giants.
yeah, one of the greatest games of all time, one of the greatest plays of all time. And you're talking to a Dolphins fan. They saved it. They
Hey,
saved us.
hey, don't
Like
worry,
we
I
were
hate
like,
Tom Brady too.
here's the thing, like you couldn't have denied it's still the greatest season ever played, but it's not technically. But it with if they win that Super Bowl, is without a doubt the greatest season that was ever played. I couldn't deal with it. But that was a fun team. The one guy I'm forgetting the name. Who was the other defensive lineman, the great defensive lineman?
Justin
He
Tuck.
Justin Tuck. Another.
He was dominant in the second Super Bowl that they had. Him and
Yeah.
Yosi Umenara really tore it up
Yeah.
there in that second Super Bowl
Yep. And
in
Pierre Paul
Indianapolis
and
when they beat the
yep.
JPP.
And you know
Yeah,
what? I liked Fossil as a coach.
yeah.
I kind of liked him as a
Well,
gruff
the
old like
2007 Super Bowl was Tom Coughlin. Both of them
I
were
meant
Tom
Coughlin.
Coughlin.
I'm sorry. I meant
Yeah, yeah.
Coughlin. That's what I meant. Who'd I say?
Fossil. He was the
Oh yeah, man.
2001.
Fossil's
He's
all right, man.
2001.
I'm sorry. Fossil lost to the Ravens. I'm talking about or no,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, Fossil. I'm sorry. Coughlin. Loved that. Like that dude, like the way he ran the team. This was on my list. I don't think I would have got to him, so I'm glad you said it. But and I won some money on him. That was that you know what? I'll tell you a little tidbit about that game. That changed Vegas. They gave a 14-point spread to the New York Giants, and everybody jumped on it. And it's historically one of the top, I think it's one of the top 10 losses overall that Vegas ever took because
Dang.
everybody took the plus 14 and it was an outright win. So you very seldom see, no matter what the difference is in teams, you very seldom see a spread even push double digits in the Super Bowl now because they're so scared of that happening again. So change the world. I like that pick. I like the '07 Giants. Thank you, '07 Giants, for saving me
Thank
from
you.
complete misery. All right. So with my third pick, the number 6 overall, man, this is tough. I'm getting down to the nitty. I'm getting down to teams I really like enjoyed the game. You know what? I'm gonna break your heart, but I'm gonna say it. And I know because I know you're not gonna pick this, and it kills me. But I like this team. I liked what they were made of. I was rooting for them. I was rooting for the city. The 2009 Saints, man.
They were on my
Um,
list.
oh, no, really, I'm
Yeah.
impressed. I didn't figure they'd even be on your list because I mean, there would be no offense for you like not loving this game, but I just I like the team like finally getting out of the ain'ts and all that. I love Drew Brees. I love the way they play. Like the whole season, I just really it's kind of like that 99 Rams. I just love the way they played. The game was great. I got a crazy story, like endless me and Charles Barkley and talking about the Super Bowl and all this stuff. But it's but here's what's funny about this. I had to fly home because we got I'll tell you a little story about this game. So it's one of my favorite teams of all time. I liked them all year. I loved the jerseys. I just loved everything about it. So gets to the Super Bowl. Well, we're in Vegas. We're supposed to fly home Friday. Well, there's a blizzard back here. I don't know if you remember that. You were pretty young, but there was a blizzard. So it shuts down all the airports. Nobody can get back to the Midwest. We got stuck in Vegas for 2 more days. Luckily, I meet Charles Barkley. We hang out for a night. So we fly out. This is all true. So we fly out Sunday. We basically take off in the first quarter of the Super Bowl. So we're it's going to sound like I'm making it up. So we're at the Vegas airport with everybody else that got stuck there watching the first quarter of the Super Bowl at our airplane terminal with Channing Tatum. True story. Him and his wife were out there celebrating the release of his newest movie. I think it was called Dear John, if I remember correct. So him and his wife were there. They got stuck. So we're all at just this terrible airport bar at the terminal watching the first part of the Super Bowl. I had to fly back. So I had to put my headphones in as soon as I got on the plane. So I didn't hear the winner because I got it recording at home, right? But I'm not going to be home for like 5-6 hours. And I got to not know. I've been waiting for the Super Bowl for 2 weeks because I love the Saints team so much. So I get home. I literally run in the house. I'm like, don't look at anything, don't say anything. And I just ran in the house at like, I don't know, why not being like 2 or 3 in the morning, whatever crazy time it was. And I turn it on and I watch the Super Bowl and I see everything and, the interception, the Terry Porter and all that stuff. So what a great Super Bowl memory for me. What a crazy weekend. But those '09 Saints, man, like I still love them. I still loved everything. I meet them. Everything they did that season, big fan. Reggie Bush showed up big in a Super Bowl. Like everybody forgets it. Reggie Bush played big in a Super Bowl and got a victory. So
Yeah. What I think you talked about, right? Like everything with Katrina, we thought maybe they were going to do it in 2006 versus the Bears, and maybe
and
we'd have gotten this Peyton Drew Brees matchup a few years earlier.
And what did
right?
we miss out? We missed out. We got Grossman, dude.
But instead, you fast forward a few years later, we get it anyways. Brady, or you get Peyton and Breeze, and you talk about just this city that had been hit by a hurricane, the city that had been just destroyed, finally had hope, and they had Drew Brees. They're playing in the Super Bowl, and they break my heart. The original boy wonder in Sean Payton. I know everybody loves
good
Sean
point.
McVay,
Good point.
but Sean Payton was the original boy wonder before Sean McVay. And so you talk about all those things leading up to it. They're one of the most likable teams. I think they're a team you could have put your arm around if you weren't a Colts fan like me and really kind of said, man, this is the team to ride. But heartbreaking moment for me. Tracy Porter, an Indiana Hoosier, gets the pick 6 on the Indianapolis Colts. So there's that kind of tie there.
Knew it was coming.
And
it's just a good looking Super Bowl too, by the way. Like it's that there is something about when
and then the onside kick. Me and Jay talked about this in my podcast. The kahunas that Tony Dungy had to start the year or to start the game off kicking to Devin Hester in 06. What about the kahunas?
Huge mistake, by the way. Terrible decision.
But the kahunas on Sean Payton to say, you know what we're going to do with Peyton Manning on the other side?
We're going to take the ball away.
We're going to onside kick it. And yes, if they recover, they get short yardage situation. But we think we can get it. And he does. And it changes the course of that Super Bowl. And they wind up winning it. And they deserved it, I think. I think the better team deserved it.
I do think that.
That city deserved it.
I think the Saints were the better team probably 3 or 4 years and didn't win one.
Yeah. So congratulations to them. Unfortunately, it had to come at my expense, but it is what it is.
All right, man. Who you got next at number 7?
All right, Jeff. So for those of you who don't know, Jeff's wife is a Ravens fan.
She is.
And so I'm going to go with the 2012 Baltimore Ravens.
I like it.
Because think about that. Like Ray Lewis is he's far enough removed from that incident that happened. And for those of you who don't know, you can Google it yourself and find out. I'm not going to run you through it. But Ray Lewis is far enough removed. Everybody wants him to go out like Jerome Bettis did and go out on top, hoisting up the Lombardi trophy. You get a young Joe Flacco who goes on this absolute tear in the playoffs.
One of the greatest playoff runs that we'll ever see.
defeats the Peyton Manning Broncos and the Patriots and all these teams to make himself to get himself there to the Super Bowl, and it's brother versus brother
Oh,
and then you got John Harbaugh and all this type of stuff. You got pre-abusive Ray Rice and all this type of stuff. So you got all these stories that are going into this,
yeah. Ed
and
Reed.
Ed Reed,
Ed
everybody loves
Reed.
Ed Reed. And you look at all this stuff, and it just made for one of these teams that you liked and you were rooting
Beyonce.
for, and it makes it a little bit more better that the other team kind of had this likable approach to them on the other side. The
Yes.
49ers in that Super Bowl
49ers were
were
unlikable that year.
very unlikable in that Super Bowl for whatever reason. I think a lot of it had to do with people weren't ready to accept things as far as the color of skin that Colin Kaepernick was, and we can go down that
Yeah.
road at a different time. But I think there's a lot of stuff that goes into why they were disliked. But at the end of the day, the Baltimore Ravens came out on top, Super Bowl
That
champs,
was
and Ray Lewis goes home a champion.
Anquan Bolden. What a
Yeah.
great this team was definitely on my list. Great team, great playoff run. Yeah, it's weird because I despise the 2000 Ravens. I couldn't stand them. But then I love this 12 team. My
You
wife
mean
had been
UAB coach Trent Dilfer didn't get you going?
yeah, I can't talk like I can't be I hate to be petty, but I'm fine with him not taking over the world this year. Anyway, we'll talk about Trent. We'll talk about Trent. But I do give credit to Trent. Like he ran his mouth for 5 years like he's the smartest person in football, and then actually put it on the line as a college coach. We'll see how it goes. A lot of people have done that. I did like this Ravens team. It was a great fun playoff run. And again, he killed 2 giants on the way. Like it's still probably the most unbelievable run. And then he went through a really good San Francisco team. That team was good. Like people forget that San
But then
Francisco
you talk
team
about too, like
was
this
good.
was a team that should have been there probably a couple of years earlier. But the Steelers were always right. The
Yep.
Steelers always those battles between those teams were just unreal leading up to that Super Bowl.
Yeah. And another thing about that Ravens team, he was gone by then, but Troy Smith, had famously had a chance to get the starting job. Flacco got it. Troy Smith was sick and Flacco earned the job. But like at the same time, Troy Smith got a weird illness in training camp and couldn't practice. So
You
Flacco
want to know
won the
something?
job and never gave it back. You know what I mean? And to do all that and great team. I like it. I like it. Number 7, I think Ravens. It's crazy to say a likable Ravens team because they're just kind of an unlike team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For whatever reason. Not in my household. My goodness. My goodness. We are a Ravens strong household, but that's cool, man. I like it. All right. You know what? I'm gonna one up you with a shocker. Is my 4th pick, the number 8th overall. I'm gonna take the 2010 Green Bay Packers. We're talking some of my most despised players of all time. We're talking Charles Woodson. We're talking Aaron Rodgers. We're talking all these dudes. But you know what? I love the playoff run. I love the way Rodgers played back then. I could not stand the thought of this Steelers team getting another one. I didn't like Palomalu. I didn't like Harrison. None of these dudes. Here comes young Aaron Rodgers into the building. Plays a really great, like a truly, I think one of the kind of an underrated great quarterback Super Bowl game. Just some of the big plays he made and stuff. But I mean, honestly, I love the way Charles Woodson played. I was completely rooting for him that night. He was hurt, actually. Now that I think about it, Charles
Broke his
Charles
arm in the
Woodson
Super Bowl.
did not play the Super Bowl.
And then they lost Nick Collins, another star
That's
safety
right.
for them.
That's right.
So
They played
in
up
that
through
Super
it.
Bowl on the defensive side, they were down.
Yeah. They had AJ
Clay
Hawk.
Matthews.
They had my man AJ Hawk. You know what I mean? I think all-time leading tackler for the Packers
Yes.
at this point.
Clay
Like after
Matthews.
Clay Matthews, yes, with the hair and all that. Just like I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed them kicking the Steelers' butt. I'm kind of like you, you like the Titans. That's the Steelers for me. You know what I mean? Like I very, very, very seldom root for them to win. And believe me, I'm all kinds of friends that are Steelers fans. I don't hate against them. I'm happy when their team wins. It's nothing like that. but I don't root for them. You know what I'm saying? I like that Packers team, and at that point, I'm like, this team's going to win 8 of them. Like nobody's stopping it. But again, Super Bowl history just ain't like that. It ain't how it goes. So I took so shockingly, Jeff took Aaron Rodgers in the 2010 Packers.
That was a good pick. For whatever reason, that didn't make my team, or make my list. But yeah, that was a good pick. I mean, you talk about Aaron Rodgers, you talk about the things that he did, and the fact that he stepped in to fill for Brett Favre. And I think at this
Yeah,
point,
Brett
yes,
Favre was still in the league at this time, by the
yes,
way.
I think Favre was one of those good old boys that everybody liked when he played. Now we know he's a money stealing,
Creep.
whatever. Please don't sue me. But
Allegedly. Did you say allegedly? You're fine.
yeah, allegedly.
He's allegedly a money
Yeah.
stealing creep.
Yeah. But anyways, he goes on to play for the Jets at this point and all this type of stuff. But I think what the reason people liked Aaron Rodgers so much was they were tired, I think, of Favre and this back and forth that he was doing. Because you remember he retired a couple years before this, he thought about retiring, but then this year he actually did retire. He came back, said he wanted the team, and the team said, no, we're going with the guy. We're going with the youngster. We're going with Aaron Rodgers. We believe he can take us to places we've never been before. And so he goes on to play for the New York Jets. And I think everybody loved this and wanted to be. It was a few seasons before that happened, but the point remains: everybody loved the Aaron Rodgers led Packers at this time, and I think everybody wanted to see Aaron one up Brett Favre because I think people were tired of Favre's retirement, not retiring, coming back, all this crap that Favre was doing at that time.
Yeah, it was a big FU to Favre, and I'm still shocked that Mike McCarthy has a Super Bowl. Like, thank goodness for Aaron Rodgers. I mean, I'm being serious, man.
Thank God for the top 3 greatest.
This is a game that I'll go back and rewatch and be like, wow, this was a game that like basically retired Troy Polamalu, or at least his aura of like when you're actually like, here's what McCarthy did. This game was as simple as this. Let's make Polamalu cover, game's over. And that's what happened. Like, go back and watch the game. Like, if you think I'm crazy, like they got Polamalu in coverage and it was a wrap.
But Jeff, think about this, man. If this goes the other way, think about how we view Big Ben as on the all-time scale. Think about how we view a guy that has 3 Super Bowls. I mean, I think he's top 10 all time already, but I think maybe he gets to top 6 or top 7 all time with
because rings. that I'm serious, like in all seriousness, that would have overcome a lot of Ben's like dislike.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't have denied it. That's a good point. But I'm glad it didn't. So I enjoyed this game. One of my favorites, Super Bowls I ever watched. And plus I got a lot of Packers friends too. So like they felt good. Like you said, it made me feel good. So that's cool. So who do you got at number 9?
I'm down to my final 2 teams, Jeff.
This is tough. We're going to talk about both of them, but just go ahead and pick one.
And I'm not sure which one to go with.
Ooh, okay.
One's the Super Bowl loser. Nope, both are. Yeah, one's a Super Bowl loser and one's a Super Bowl winner.
Okay.
I'm going to go with the loser.
Ooh.
And I'm going to go with the 2018 Rams. And I say the Rams because you look at what they had done before, right? Leading up with the Jeff Fisher-led era. Is Jared Goff a bust? Is he not a bust? Carson Wentz is the better quarterback. He's Andrew Luck-esque. Yeah. All this stuff around him. And then they bring in Nick Foles and Case Keenum, and that doesn't work. They leave St. Louis. They go to Los Angeles. They get a restart. They fire Jeff Fisher. They bring in the youngster and Sean McVay. And this offense is the greatest show on turf 2.0.
Yeah, it was good.
They come in, and who do they play?
No.
Darth Vader again. They play Darth Vader. He's back. The Joker's in there, and Batman's here to beat him, except this time the Joker gets him. And it's unfortunate, but you look at that team and everything around them, and how could you not root for them after what they have been through leading up to those years, those 1-15 years, those 2-14 years.
Those weird last couple years in St. Louis.
Yeah.
That were just like, we know you're leaving, like this, like lame duck years to where like, was it Chris Long?
Yeah.
wasted his career
They don't
in
really
St. Louis.
know. They don't really have a fan base because they're new to Los Angeles. All this stuff, Jeff, leads me to say, like, I put my arm around him and said, Jared Goff, carry me home. And it was one of the worst Super Bowls ever.
Yeah.
Um,
But
but
here's the thing, they were in it.
yeah,
Just if you just look at the point difference, people hated this Super Bowl. I didn't hate the Super Bowl as much as other people. It really wasn't as much about bad offense as there was some really good defense in this Super Bowl. Like obviously Goff was overwhelmed. He only needed to make a couple throws and the Rams, like if you go back and they could replay this game, the Rams win by 30. But they just that night weren't mentally ready to play this team because I think because we know that Brady was ready at this point and he still couldn't score
yeah,
against Aaron
yeah.
Donald and all these guys. So that's really one that the Rams let get away. But you're right, McVay, the upstart, the season. I think people look at this Super Bowl and they forget how good the Rams were that season.
Oh yeah, they were
Like
so
it was
good,
awesome.
so good. They were one
Yeah,
of the toughest teams to beat that year.
yeah. It was. I mean, honestly, we don't consider it like an upset or whatever you want to call it because it was Tom Brady. But this Rams teams should have won that Super Bowl, and it was a weird one. I enjoyed it more than almost everybody I know, but I like you picking that team because I really did. Like I was all in on the Rams, and I enjoyed that team. So good pick at number 9. Oh, this is a tough one, man. So for my last pick. Man, we're going to talk about all these teams real quick, but I got to make one more pick at number 10. I got three teams left, and I'm trying to think of which one made me the happiest. You know what? I'm going to go with it because of the game was so much fun to watch. I'm going to pick this team, even though the other two teams, I kind of probably like them better. I'm going to go with the 2017 Philadelphia Eagles.
That was the team I was debating. Is either
They
them or this Rams team.
This is Carson Wentz. You got the big lead. They couldn't lose. He blows his knee out. Nick Foles comes in. You know what I mean? Everybody knows the story. They get through. They kind of like a lot of the parts of this team aren't like household names and hadn't been there forever. They were kind of put together and built, and they get there, and then they're playing like you said. Here's Darth Vader again. And we're like, man, this is it. This is a lot like this week coming up. Everybody's like, Purdy ain't beating Mahomes. Like that's a big narrative of this game is just like, this guy ain't beating that guy. Well, Nick Foles beating Tom Brady in a Super Bowl sounded impossible. We're talking a Philadelphia team.
I thought they were going to lose by 14.
Yeah, Philadelphia team hadn't won a Super Bowl since 1980. Time is running out. They didn't have this. They didn't have that. And we see the highest, I'm sure it's still the highest offensive output Super Bowl. I think it's 1,000 total yards or whatever. Brady had one of the greatest Super Bowl games ever. Nick Foles had one of the greatest Super Bowl games ever. But we got the play. We got the Philly special, the touchdown. We got the Philly special incompletion to Tom Brady. It was one of the most fun Super Bowls that I ever watched. And Philadelphia got it done. And I do give credit. This is probably what put me over the top on this one. I do give credit to how much the Philly fans enjoyed it. Like I do give credit to a fan base. It's like, I know how much you all really enjoyed that. Like it's not a wasted Super Bowl. The 17 Eagles, man, what a great story. What a great Super Bowl. It'll never go away. That'll be historic.
Yeah.
That was the one. And New England really felt like they think they let that one get away. Like they definitely that's one that Tom let get away and literally like incompletion in his hand. So 17 Eagles, man, a lot of fun. It was a cool season.
Yeah,
And
it was a fun one for me, Jeff, because I remember I'm a big Colin Cowherd fan. I remember he's one of the reasons I got into podcasting.
Yeah.
But I remember leading into that, Colin, some of these other people I trust and listen to were like, this is going to be a close game. It's going to be a close. I was like, there's no way.
Yeah.
No way.
That Patriots team was good, dude.
A Nick Foles-led Eagles team, a guy who almost retired 2 years ago because he was the third guy on the Chiefs roster, and they don't have a good quarterback to save their life. Yeah. Actually, it might have been Alex Smith at that point. But still, the point remains, he's the third quarterback of the Chiefs roster contemplating retirement, is going to come in here and make it close with Tom Brady. And what happens is like you said, dude, one of the greatest Super Bowls we've ever seen, one of the highest offensive outputs we've ever seen.
Oh,
And the fact that he almost did it again the next year was insane too. But Nick, I think for me, what made it so special was the fact that it caught you off guard because you
yes.
weren't expecting it.
It was so much
We
fun.
all expected Tom Brady versus Matt Ryan to be a high flying affair because Matt Ryan won the MVP that year. Everyone expects Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Patrick Mahomes to be a good game because they're the best two teams. Nobody
Yeah.
expected Nick Foles to go in there and throw haymakers and hit him with the right and the left and wind up knocking him out in the 12th round the way that they did.
Yeah. And so many players for the Eagles played good.
Yeah.
The
It was
receivers
a
made
real
huge
team effort.
catches. Like they were completely
The
ready for the
defense there at
game.
the end, forcing a couple strip sacks, and it
Yeah,
does it.
it just unbelievable. Like if we're ranking Super Bowls, like it's probably in my top 5 as far as just like
1,000
I just
out of
sat
all the
there
ones
and
I've watched.
I remember like when the game was over, I was just like, that was fun.
I'll
Again,
tell you a
it
funny
was just fun.
I'll tell you a funny story. Not really, kind of, but not really. I was living here in Vincennes at the time. I was a student at Vincennes University. I was living at a house with 8 of my friends, and
Okay.
I was working at Walmart at the time. And Walmart,
I too, former Walmart employee of the month at Walmart one time. Just side note. How about that? You didn't know
Walmart,
that, did you?
Walmart at this time. I don't know when you worked there, but Walmart at this time had you did if you wanted to call in, you didn't have to pick up the phone like you did the old days, or like I
Oh
had
yeah.
to many times and still had to.
I had to call in and fake cough, dog.
Yeah, you didn't have to call in. You just pressed a button and say I wasn't coming in. You could put whatever reason you wanted. I called in that day. I pressed the
Bro, I'd
button.
have
Said
never went to work.
I called in, said I was sick, and I stayed at home, watched the Super Bowl
100%.
with my friends. I bought into peer pressure and stayed home and called in.
You
So,
did the right thing, dog.
I would. Could you imagine if I had missed the Super Bowl? How
Bro,
crazy
I
that would
don't
have been.
like all the time I worked at Walmart, like I look back now as a 48-year-old, I don't regret one call off.
Yeah, me
Like
either.
not one.
Me either.
That's funny. I was in the receiving department. Like we had loaded trucks and stuff, but yeah, I can't like I don't look back and like, man, I should have went. Nah, man.
No.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
There's certain jobs you like when you're young and do that, you can that was an important one. You can't miss that Super Bowl for you're gonna make like $45 that night. Like, dude, you ain't no reason to miss the Super Bowl for that.
Yeah.
All right.
You're
Okay.
right.
Give me a couple. Who didn't we catch on your list? We'll cover them real quick. I got a couple. You got a couple, I'm sure.
You knocked out the one that I was debating between the Rams and the Eagles, which was
Oh,
or were
nice.
the two teams that were final. But I will say a team that kind of just popped into my head is, and I may be getting the year wrong, but I think the 2021 Cincinnati Bengals with Joe Burrow
Cincinnati
and,
Bengals.
and that
Not
team.
bad.
You talk about what they have been through as a franchise, and you talk about Joe Burrow, who had gone from maybe he's a 6th-round pick to in LSU leading one of
To
the
the best season in
to one of
college
the
football
best
history.
seasons in college football history ever, if not the best. And then gets drafted, gets hurt, and everyone in the brother, including me, Jeff, and in that entire draft process is saying the Bengals are a fool if you draft anybody but Penei Sewell to protect your quarterback. And they
Fair.
don't draft Penei Sewell. Instead, they draft Jamar Chase, and they go on this run that year, the second year for Joe Burrow, and it puts him in the Super Bowl. And
Yeah.
he's still the only quarterback in the AFC to beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. And you look at it and you say, man,
And
this
it'd
is
be Josh Allen
well,
too, dog.
outside of Tom Brady, my bad. The only active quarterback to beat the reigning Super Bowl champs in the playoffs. But you look at it, dude, just everything around this team, everything that this city had been through, you were like, this is finally it, dude. And they fell a little bit short to
Yeah.
the Los Angeles Rams. It was sad. I was really rooting for the Bengals and Joe Burrow at that time. And that's who I was a fan of, dude. And for that game, anyways.
The only reason it has nothing to do with the Bengals, I agree with everything you said. The only reason that they're probably not higher on the list is because the Rams weren't a villain that year.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
The
There
Rams
was
were
no
kind of
villain.
whoever won that was it was kind of a feel good either way.
Yeah.
So I think like if the Bengals
Because
would have been
Matthew
playing
Stafford's on the other side. You think about everything he had been through with the
like I
Lions and
think a
all
lot
this.
of people would pick that team as a feel good team. Like
Yeah.
you got Aaron, you got a Hall of Famer Aaron Donald, you got Matthew Stafford who had spent all those wasted years in
Yeah.
Detroit, and all that stuff. So I think that's what kept like I just think it was like feel good story versus feel good story. So it kind of canceled each other out is the only reason because if it's the Bengals versus man, I don't even know who the villain in the NFC is. Like
Let's say it's
we'll
the
say Tom,
Cowboys because nobody
we'll
likes the
say Tom
Cowboys.
Brady and we'll say
Yeah.
Tom Brady and the
The
Buccaneers,
Bucks.
like that
Yeah.
kind of team, or the Cowboys. Oh my gosh, it's one of the most all time. That's the only thing that canceled it out. It had nothing to do with what the Bengals did. It's just the Rams were so likable that like because I personally liked the Rams that year. I wasn't rooting against the Bengals. I just really like I like the Rams. I had Rams friends. I like the Stafford story. And again, Burrow's youth and the team's youth is like, they'll be back. We don't know that they'll be back, but it didn't give you that like it didn't drum. They didn't have a villain is the only
Yeah.
reason. They went through the Chiefs though. You know, they last year they went through the Bills, like they've done everything. But and Burrow's kind of one of those dudes like he will admit like he's not the guy you wrap your arms around. But that's not an insult. Like
I mean,
this
I
dude
like
don't
him.
need
I
oh no, no.
like him.
But this dude don't need you
This.
to wrap his arms around. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. Like he's
Yeah.
kind of a killer. And so
Yeah.
he's not one of these like, oh man, we're rooting like you said, like with Favre, like how we kind of got tired of Favre. Like Burrow ain't that dude. Like Burrow's a Joe Montana, Burrow's a Brady, Burrow's a Mahomes. He's like, I'm here to beat you. Like everything's going good, and I'm here to beat you. I ain't Kurt Warner.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
I
Like
got you.
so that's the only thing.
And
And
then
just a couple.
and then one more I got is
Okay.
'04, the Seattle Seahawks with Matt Hasselbeck and Sean Alexander and all of them. I just think you think about
Oh,
this is
talk about
that first Super Bowl they ever made,
yeah,
first
that's a
one in
good
team
point.
history. You have
And
a
against
guy
the
you
yeah,
have a guy who was dominant at the running back position
yeah.
leading up to that point. And
Best player in the league. Best player in the
yeah,
league at that
best
point.
player in the league. He had won the MVP in 2001 or 2000, something like that.
Yeah.
He had won the league MVP, and this was just a guy who this was a team who everybody kind of I think wanted to win, and the Steelers got it. Big Ben got his first one.
Yeah, that's a good just a couple out of mine. Nobody's going to be surprised. The 0-2 Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah,
I just like the only thing that holds me back, and I probably wouldn't pick him, is I don't like Gruden, and I didn't like him then. This has nothing to do with like
yeah,
current Gruden, but he just wasn't that likable of a coach. But the team, if Tony Dungy's coaching his team, they're probably number one on my list. Even like and I didn't like the Raiders. I liked Sapp and Brooks and all the players. Like I really liked that team. I liked them, kicking the crap out of them. I really enjoyed that game. Love work done. So it's just one of these teams that like I kind of, and then another one, I'll always throw this out there 87 Washington Commanders. I'm sorry. Like, we had 3 one-hit wonders in one game and, upset the
yeah,
world and everything and won the Super Bowl. If you couldn't wrap your arms around that team, but that was more like when it was over. Like the playoff run was cool, but like people really didn't wrap their arms around them until they defeated Elway. So you didn't get to enjoy it in the moment like you did these other teams, along the way. Plus the way media was covered and everything. All you really saw, like it's hard to believe there was a time, all you really did was watch the game and then like Murder She Wrote was on. There wasn't 8 hours of NFL Network to
yeah.
interview, to break down, to over talk about. There wasn't podcasts. It was like game's over. 2 weeks later, all they're back. I don't know what like until the game was over, like we didn't know what Doug Williams sounded like. We didn't know what Ricky Williams sounded or Ricky Sanders sounded like. We didn't know, what Timmy Smith sounded like. We don't know anything about these players. So you just couldn't attach to players. That's why the 85 Bears was so rare, because they were one of the rare older teams that we got to know. So that was the only thing. But I'm always going to shout out that I told Couch Coach Live, like I'm going to rep Doug Williams every Super Bowl show I do. Until I stop doing this. So, Stu, man, that was great. I like the list. So I'll just go through it real quick so everybody can catch up. I'll put this out there on social media. I'll put the list out there. So let's see. Where's my one at? What? Oh, 1, Arizona Cardinals, the 2008 Arizona Cardinals, Larry Fitzgerald. 2, 85 Bears. We don't need to say anything more. Looks like 3, the 1990 St. Louis Rams, right? That sounds weird to say
99.
now.
Yeah.
It's been so long, right? Uh, Number 4, I took 2003 Seattle Seahawks, against Peyton Manning. Number 5, '07 Giants, the Giant Killer, Save the World, '07 Giants, the catch, the helmet catch, the whole deal. Number 6, the '09 Saints, the Drew Brees, the hurricane, the whole story, toppling Peyton Manning and all that. Number 7, the 2012 Baltimore Ravens, one of the greatest playoff runs we ever saw. Went through the Giants went through, not when I say the Giants, not the team, I'm talking like the Hall of Fame. We're talking Manning and Brady to get there. Lights go out. Beyonce shakes the lights out. The rest is his Harbaugh, Kaepernick, all the storylines. You know, Crazy. Number 8, 2010 Green Bay. Essentially, the rising of Aaron Rodgers and a young team, and the next version of the Green Bay Packers, and they take down the let's just say the hated Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know, and a great Super Bowl too between two classic franchises. Number 9, the 2018 Los Angeles Rams. It was more about their season, the offense, and everything. They lost a tough one that they probably should have had to the Patriots, but still a team that there was no downside to this team. And a lot of the guys on that team did wind up winning the Super Bowl. So you got to feel good about that. And number 10 was the 2017 Philadelphia Eagles. Big Nick and the gang, the Philly special, toppling Brady, and one of the best offensive games we ever saw. So that's our top 10 most likable Super Bowl teams of all time. That was Stuart Brooking from the Morning Brew with Stu. Go check it out. He's got Super Bowl content all week. Our show is out now as you hear this. Check out his show with Jace. Just check out everything Stu does. Keep up with him. Follow him on Twitter. Where can they follow you on Twitter, Stu?
Personal Twitter is at StuPoc5, and the podcast is at Stu Morning. Big thank you, Jeff. Big fan of your work, obviously.
This was good, man.
Love doing shows with you. You're a co-host basically of my show because you're on there so often.
I feel the same.
Got a lot of work coming up. Super Bowl, then draft, and then me and Jeff, we hit the quarterback countdown, man.
It's coming up.
Start off the summer, dude. It's coming up.
And everybody go check out Stu's podcast, because it's not just football talk. He's got he goes so far as to this kind of stuff. He also has football coaches on there talking about the real stuff, the X's and O's, but we also do some movies, some general stuff. So just go check out Stu's podcast, scroll through it. You know how it works. We appreciate it. Check out Off the Ball Network, shares, reviews, share this. As Stu would always say, force it on your friends, whether they like it or not. Everything helps. I'm Jeff. This is Jeff Needs Sports. Have a